It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. It is a brand new week, a brand new day. Welcome aboard. Good morning to you, whatever you may be doing. Starting off your day, ending your day. It does not matter. Welcome aboard. We love having you along today. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. It's a Monday morning. And let's start it off the right way, shall we? As we start off a brand new week, we try and set the tone. We try and get a little excited about it. And this is the way that we do it right here on the Voice of Reason. It's a Monday morning.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
There we go. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you're going to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. What's on your mind? Anything you want to talk about, discuss? There's been a lot happening over the weekend. First off, happy Martin Luther King Day. It is a fascinating day where the media nonstop, all-out war against Donald Trump. All-out war against President Donald Trump and the Republicans because of the comments that were made last week on Haiti and Africa, supposedly, allegedly. We're not going to confirm or deny whether it actually happened or not, but supposedly it happened. Now we get to worry about the FCC and the investigation happening down in Hawaii. We'll talk about all this and more today. Get your thoughts on all this. It's interesting how all of a sudden it's Donald Trump's fault that an accidental message was sent out to individuals down in Hawaii. I'm not sure how that's Donald Trump's fault. I don't know how that is Donald Trump's fault. I'd like to see that maybe if he pushed the button. I mean, he was joking about a button before with North Korea, right? With Kim Jong-un. He was joking about how his button works, how his button's way better, how his button is just the button that's, bigger and more powerful and that's going to work. Maybe that's the button they were talking about. Is that he hit the button and then it accidentally sent out all these messages to everybody vacationing or living down in Hawaii. And then there was the 38 minutes of absolute panic and terror and horror that happened down there. Now, am I lightening the situation that happened down there? Absolutely not. It's a very scary deal. If I was down in Hawaii and I got a text message that said a missile's on the way, take cover, this is not a drill, I would be a little panicky myself. I'm not saying that what happened is okay in any way, shape, or form. But first off, accidents do happen. They are testing the equipment, which shouldn't have gone to the private sector and shouldn't have gone out to actually everybody that's living in Hawaii. But how in the world is it the problem and the fault of President Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form? I have a very hard time understanding this. I have a very hard time understanding how he is to blame for this. Now, you could try and go back and say, well, we wouldn't have to worry about this if he'd just play nice with everybody, and then we wouldn't have to worry about the fact that they're threatening us and that we have a potential of this harming us. Maybe you have some type of legit answer. Well, not even there. No. You try and make that case and it just doesn't work. Because then you'd say that we should be the weak-spined, mindless drones that don't mind actually everybody bullying us and pushing us around and making threats to us, and then we should pander to them. I just don't understand how we can be at fault in any way, shape, or form. But it's Donald Trump's fault. Just like, remember, it was George W. Bush's fault for Hurricane Katrina and for all the different disasters that happened and for everybody that died, whether it was natural or unnatural deaths during the time that he was president. It was his fault that they died. Same now. It's now President Donald Trump's fault for everybody that had a scare panic in Hawaii over the weekend. 316-721-8255. This is what we're up against. It is always his fault no matter what. Now, he's made the case that he said that it was a state issue, which I agree. Yes, it is a state issue. because if you look at it, again, traditionally through the Constitution, that we should have our own requirements set up by state, as opposed to the government controlling something like this. And I don't know how the federal government should have any say in something like that unless it was a natural disaster that was nationwide, in which case all the states would be sending down an EAS. Now, if you're familiar with how the EAS works, we have one at every radio station, we have one at every TV station, and you hear the break-ins every once in a while. This is a test of the National Weather Service. This is a test of the EAS system where you get your information for, if there's an emergency, if there's a natural disaster, if there's severe weather. And we do that. We broadcast that. And we hear that test, and we hear the test tone come down all the time. Or if there's an amber alert that comes down, that's what you hear. We have these systems in place. Now, if there was a warning that came over the KQAM airwaves or the Mid-American airwaves all over wherever you may be, and you hear it and say this is not a test, but there's a tornado that's touched down, or there's an amber alert, this is not a test, this is not a drill, that's what's going on, then, do your ears perk up a little bit? Absolutely. But even if that did happen, I would go back to, again, how is that the fault of Donald Trump? How is that the fault of the president of the United States? He doesn't have anything to do with it. But yet you hear in the media that, well, everybody panicked because he doesn't know how to play nice. It's all his fault, and we should hate more on Donald Trump. Not to mention that he's just a flaming racist because he said that he hated Haiti and Africa for saying that they are blankety blanks, and why are we bringing people over from those countries, which we'll talk about again a little bit later as well. 316-721-8255. Let's go right to the phones this morning to kick off a brand new Monday morning. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, this is Jim.
Hey, good morning, Jim. How are you?
Oh, I'm just excuse me. I think the Hawaii false nuclear warning alert, one, if they were being launched at it would only take about 18 minutes for a missile from North Korea to get there. So it makes no sense that it's a 38-minute period of time that people are all worried.
Well, that's true, but a lot of people don't know the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, and especially during a time of crisis, they don't really have a time, a sense of time in that sense. So they're just panicking until they hear otherwise.
What's going on, I think, is the same thing with the fellow in California swatting the Wichita Police Department. I think this guy in Hawaii, it wasn't an accident. He deliberately set it out because he could.
Sure.
I don't, obviously Trump has nothing to do with a state employee working in a local office. But the guy's got this button, he's got this ability. And after years and months of doing this stuff, he gave him his chance to do something and get the media all upset. And, he didn't hurt anybody.
Of course
now,
not.
Obviously, they haven't reported how many traffic accidents happened or suicides or other things.
And those are probably his fault as well, because he created a world of non-hope and change, and people wanted that hope and change, so therefore they couldn't live without hope and change, so therefore they probably drove themselves off a cliff or committed suicide in some way, shape, or form, and that is his fault, so we can start blaming him for all the mass suicides that happen in the country as well.
Yeah.
Well,
this is Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday.
Yes.
And it also happens to be the time that they're celebrating it. Wichita State University will start classes tomorrow, by the way. The thing that we need to remember is Martin Luther King, for all his good points, have been co-opted by people who don't understand what his I Have a Dream speech was about. We now have the dream of Al Sharpton and stuff. I have a dream where my skin color is more important than anything else. Whereas Martin Luther King was about content and character and going to school and staying in school and being honest and being helpful and not being what we have. This comment about Haiti, I don't know what Trump said, but, he could have used words like that to describe Chicago or Los Angeles or New York. These are cities where there are actually piles of excrement not dog doo-doo, but people doo-doo in doorways and in corners in the streets. So it's not just the murder rate in Chicago, which is bad, or the murder rate in St. Louis, or the crime rate in Los Angeles. It's the entire structure of the areas has fallen down, and it's fallen down because that's what the local politicians have created.
Oh, sure. And you can imagine, the inefficiencies, which I appreciate the call very much, Jim. You're absolutely right. And we're going to get to that actually in a little bit with Martin Luther King and today's times. With him saying that, they would consider him a right-wing nut job. They consider him what do they call him? Uncle Tom sometimes, or whatever. They would consider him a right-wing radical with the way he spoke then, trying to actually create equality for everybody regardless of skin color. And the activists today do not look kindly upon him because of some of the comments that he's made. So it's very interesting to watch how they have pretty much shredded everything that he had believed in before and what he's done. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the comments that Donald Trump made potentially, allegedly, about Haiti and Africa had nothing to do with skin color. No, he's not a racist at all in any way, shape, or form. Everybody tries to lump him into that, and if they actually pay attention to what he says, as opposed to hearing it third word and third party from the media or somebody else that says, oh, Donald Trump's a racist because, and they generalize his phrases, then we don't get the truth out there. Hashtag fake news. You know what I'm talking about? Just a little bit. Lots to get to today. Your thoughts and calls as well. Happy Monday morning. Stay here.
Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Mid-America Network.
Hey, good morning to you. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. Happy Monday morning to you. Lots to get to today. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we're going to be airing our interview we did on Friday with Alan Cobb. He is the president of the Kansas Chamber of Commerce, talking about tax reform, what to look forward to, and the agenda we need to have with the legislative session this year. So we'll replay that interview coming up at the bottom of the hour. Until then, it's open lines to you at 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. As the weekend always full of shenanigans, they always like to slip things through in the media. I was watching a little bit, just a tiny bit. I can't watch a whole lot of it because it drives me nuts, but I was watching a little bit of the weekend talk shows with talking about President Donald Trump and about the news and about the whatever. And it's fascinating to watch how they always find a way to demonize him in any way, shape, or form. And they just use it as the default. That's just the norm. That's how everybody believes. That's how everybody thinks. That's how everybody views him. That's how everybody just assumes that the world's going to be. It's very interesting to watch how they love to just assume everybody hates Donald Trump, and that's the end of it. End of story. Move along. They don't have anybody that's pro-Trump or for Trump in any way, shape, or form. And I'm not one that likes to focus on Donald Trump all the time. There's other shows that do that. And as you know, we like to focus mostly on state and regional issues. But I do find it fascinating because at the same time, while they demonize Trump at the federal level, the state media likes to demonize Governor Sam Brownback and Chris Kobach and all the conservatives in the state. And this happens everywhere. Go to any state and you'll see them demonize the state officials that are the conservatives, that are the traditionalists, that are the constitutionalists, because that is old news. It's outdated. It's not retro anymore, and we just can't go along with that mentality. And they hate it. They hate the fact that there are people that are still out there that believe differently than the way that they believe themselves. They don't like that. And we just say, hey, you know what? Well, we just don't care. We just say, hey. That's really what we have to say to them, because we don't really care. They feel excited. They feel really happy and excited about what they do when they every time that they write a little opinion article or a blog, or they write a story, or they're on TV at the national level and they're talking about how evil Donald Trump is or how evil Governor Sam Brownback is, and they attack him and they do that little jab. They get all excited about it.
We did it! We did it! We did it! Yay!
I mean, they just get all giddy inside. 316-721-8255. Governor Sam Brownback, by the way, not only working again to be renominated, which he is renominated for the ambassadorship for religious freedom at the ambassadorship at large for religious freedom internationally. He was also up in Washington, D.C. over the weekend and late last week as he was talking to President Donald Trump about the mentorship program that he has at the state corrections facilities. And a wonderful program. I got to, those of you that don't know that we're in the western part of the state and beyond, I was actually at one of the corrections facilities a few months ago, got to tour through it and got to walk through and see everything. And it was really, really cool how we got to learn about the mentorship program that he has. Having inmates try and mentor other inmates who are almost out or who may not be out for a while, but still are working on bettering their lives, bettering themselves, learning how to construct and learning how to structure their lives to where they have some structure. Because many of these individuals that are in prison, that are in the corrections facilities, don't have any structure in their lives. They never have, which is why they never thought it was a bad thing when they went out and they committed a crime, robbery or a theft or a burglary or a murder or whatever. They don't care because they never had any structure. They never learned what the rule of law was. They never learned what was right and what was not right in their lives. And having a mentorship program, the best thing that we can do as conservatives is to not have someone go in and out of prison over and over and over and over again, costing us taxpayer money. And no matter where you sit on the political spectrum, you would think that'd be a good idea, whether it's because emotionally you want them to be out of servitude and actually in society, or whether you think that just paying taxpayer money for them to repeatedly go back into prison is a bad thing. We need to find ways to make sure that once they've paid their dues, once they've recognized that they've committed a crime and that they're not going to do something like that again, that they can go out into society and that they have structure, they have a foundation. They're not just being thrown out and saying, hey, good luck to you. And then they feel more comfortable coming back in because it's structured. Because the world moves too fast for them, because the world is a very scary place. It was a really fascinating tour that I got to see. And President Donald Trump, I have to say, is Governor Brownback has created a program, created a system that is hugely successful. Regardless of what you think about Governor Sam Brownback, him and his team have created mentorship programs and different incentive programs within the corrections facilities to create that incentive to do good, to learn their mistakes, to learn a work ethic, to learn X, Y, and Z. And thankfully, I mentioned this actually when I was there. I mentioned it to the individuals that I worked with and toured through with, that I said, why don't we do this at the federal level? Why don't they listen and why don't they see? We've had, 40-50% reduction rate in inmates returning to prison because of these programs. That's huge. And thankfully now we have a president and an administration at the federal level that understands and that's open to listening. And that's what we had Governor Sam Brownback do last week, which is huge, I think, for us. Another way that they're looking at us for the state of Kansas as an example of what to do at the federal level. We should be proud of that. This is The Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network. Stay here. Lots to get to today. It's a Monday morning, kicking off your Monday morning the right way. Stay tuned.
The one thing we got, and I said, what about breakfast at Tiffany? She said, I think I remember the film, and as I recall.
It's time for Reason.
We just increased education funding last year, $400 million over the next 2 years. That's not enough. They wanted $1 billion. So what do? They compensate by now coming out with a new lawsuit or continuing the lawsuit, asking for an additional $600 million.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. Happy Monday. Happy Martin Luther King Day. What a day it is. as we roll along, advancing conservatism on a daily basis, which even, by the way, what Martin Luther King had talked about back in the day was conservatism ideologically speaking, Republican speaking. It was the Democrats, remind you, back in the day, and still today, that advocate for resegregation, that advocated for the Jim Crow laws, that advocated for the things that are not the most favorable for equality for everybody, because that's not really the agenda of the progressives in any way, shape, or form. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. I want to shift gears just for a minute here as we talk about our state legislative session. We're kicking off week number 2 already in Topeka. If you're in the state of Kansas, if you're in the other states, then your sessions may be starting at a different time. But in the state of Kansas, this is week number 2, and this is when the debate begins. This is when the debate and the dialogue begins. Last week was just the teaser, the promo, the beginning of the session with Governor Sam Brownback giving the State of the State address that still was not very popular in any way, shape, or form by a lot of our legislators on both sides of the aisle. Now, last on Friday, wrapping up week number 1, we talked with Alan Cobb, head of the Kansas Chamber of Commerce. We always love chatting with him when we can. This is what he had to say last week. He's president of the Kansas Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Alan Cobb is on the line with us here. Alan, good morning to you, my friend.
Good morning, Andy. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Tell you what, 2017 went by fast and was an interesting year, to say the least. I'm hoping we can use some of that momentum from federal tax reform at the federal level to apply that towards what we're doing at the statewide level. Can we do something like that?
Boy, I don't know. I'd like to think it's possible. I think that the Kansas Supreme Court and how the legislature responds to their rulings make that a little difficult. But I do think you're going to see higher rates of economic growth at the national level, and that always then trickles down to states. You'll see higher rates of growth in Kansas. There's no question about it. The puzzle is, what can we do at the state level to make that even better? And obviously, if it was easy, we've had governors, particularly, I think, give Governor Brownback some credit for focusing on the lack of growth in Kansas and trying to do something about it. It didn't. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. But I think we need to still focus on rates of economic growth. That solves an awful lot of problems, including school finance.
Exactly. What we seem to be in the state, for whatever reason, we seem to be on the doing the 180 from what the federal government's doing. When Governor Brownback did his tax reform in 2012 was the same time Barack Obama did the major tax increases at the federal level. Now we're doing tax increases at the federal level, and we're starting to try and raise taxes at the state level. We seem to be not utilizing the potential of growth and opportunity that we have because we're trying to do the opposite.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. It is kind of the opposite. And I think we, the chamber and our members, we're in it for the long haul. I mean, I'm not going to be worried and start crying over what happened last year. We're going to look over the long term of how to start reducing rates and have more efficient tax system in Kansas at the state and local level. You got property taxes that certainly drive a lot of government spending in Kansas. It's primarily local, but we need to look at the state brackets and what's being taxed and how we're taxing it. Our state sales tax, sometimes business folks don't talk about that. I think they should. Businesses pay sales taxes, and our combined state and local sales tax are average of the locals, because we have local tax rates all over the board in Kansas. But if you add those together, average, we're 9th highest in the country, and that's not accounting for cost of living differences. And that's a competitive issue. Our top marginal rate in Kansas is higher than Massachusetts. Yes, that's a bit of a talking point, because you have to look at what levels of income are taxed and when do the brackets kick in, et cetera. But taxes remain a competitive issue that I hope more and more legislators take a harder and more critical look at.
Sure. And as you mentioned before, I mean, it's going to be in baby steps where we have to start working towards the right direction again, because we can't change what happened last session. I'm concerned, though, looking at the Kansas Policy Institute and some of the stuff that you guys have come out with, is that back in 2015, when we had the tax breaks for the LLCs, I know it's not a loophole because it wasn't a shenanigans they were getting away with, but it was the incentives to grow the businesses. 80% of new job growth was because of the LLCs. Now we're seeing an 18-year unemployment rate in the state of Kansas. I'm scared to death that by repealing all this and raising taxes business-wise and income-wise, that we're going to start seeing the lack of growth of new businesses in the state again. I don't want to see that happen.
I think that's a reasonable concern, and I think that the legislators who voted for the tax increases were not as concerned about that, and I think they should. I think they looked at the so-called budget hole, which was a bit of a myth, and thought, well, they just have to do this extreme action to raise. It was $600 million in 1 year, so I don't care how many years you want to add it up, but if you raise taxes, it's not a 1 year deal unless you really think the legislature is going to repeal it the next year, which they're not going to this year. So let's just say over 2 years, it's a $1.2 billion tax increase with a state economy of around $150 billion. That's a lot. I mean, that's a big chunk of the state economy for just state government. Again, that doesn't include the federal or all of the local tax bites.
No, absolutely. Talk about your thoughts on the first week of the legislative session. Obviously, not a whole lot got done. A few bills were presented, a little bit of dialogue, kind of setting the stage for what's to come for this year. We also had the State of the State address from Governor Brownback that caused a lot of controversy on both sides of the aisle. But overall, for the first week, what do you think happened so far?
Well, it was uneventful other than the State of the State, and that was very eventful. And I'm puzzled at the governor's proposal. I mean, last year I think he held fairly strong and vetoed the tax increases, but then this year he wants to spend the tax increases. And I think he's been, I think, rightfully concerned about the role of the Supreme Court in legislative matters, but yet he seems to be giving them a pass. So that's the biggest thing. And how much the governor is going to actually engage the legislature, or is he just throwing us out, which is my guess, is he's just throwing it out and let the legislature deal with it. I do have to quote, I always like clever comments and sense of humor from legislative body or legislators or political leaders. I've got to quote J.R. Clays, a Republican from Salina, who said, he tweeted this: the governor has waved the white flag of surrender from the dome, tossed every ally he had under the bus, then put the bus in reverse, then lit fire to the bus. Whether you agree with that or not, I think that's pretty clever. And I thought it's kind of funny. It's good to laugh every once in a while at the politics in Kansas.
Well, it is, and he makes a really good point because everybody always hypes up how he's the least popular governor, which I don't believe because I have supported a lot of what he does, but it did throw a wrench into the system, I thought, and either it was because I thought he was trying to make a deeper point by kind of giving them the pun of you can have the cake and eat it too. Here's the money and here's how to do it without raising taxes to help you in the midterm. But by the way, the comments that he made later in the speech saying, well, money's not going to solve it, and we need a constitutional amendment to fix this for later on down the road. I thought he was trying to do that underlying message, but his tweet the next day saying how we need to just comply with the Kansas Supreme Court kind of blew and shattered that theory. So you're right. I'm not sure where he was coming from there, and a lot of conservatives are very upset with him not taking a firm stance and continuing that fight.
And I think they should be upset, or let's get some clarification of where the governor is going to be. And look, we all know he was renominated for the cabinet, or not the cabinet position, but a Senate confirmed position, and I'm not sure how long that will take. So he's a little bit in limbo, and I understand that. But
sure,
it's to give him credit for having an interesting and substantive speech, whether we agreed with it or not. But I think this gets to an issue. I think it's important. The Supreme Court, their role in our public policy in Kansas, I think it's well outsized. I am a licensed attorney in Kansas. Our chamber legislative agenda, we include an item that we're going to support a constitutional amendment that clarifies that it's the legislators' role to fund schools, not the Supreme Court. And it's not just school finance and what the Supreme Court and the appellate courts are having opinions on. It's stuff like workers' comp and constitutional remedies. The Kansas Court of Appeals just threw out a case. This is a case I agree with, in the Central County and USD 259 had basically wanted the Kansas to have a completely new way to value stores, and how they the appraisal of them, which would have been a huge tax revenue boost for the state and for the county and for the school district. And the appellate court, to their credit, threw it out. And there's also a case pending for the Kansas Supreme Court that might do away with any of the liability caps and just say those are unconstitutional. So There's a lot of stuff. I know the Supreme Court in Kansas, some of the politics policy gets focused on, well, death penalty and school finance. There's a whole bunch of things that I think people should be concerned about how the Supreme Court's going to rule.
It was already going to be difficult to try and figure out the funding formula for education to either fight the Supreme Court or find a way to comply with it, to not have to raise taxes. And then along with the totally other issue with Medicaid expansion, this was going to be an already tough session. Do you think that the statements from Governor Brownback are going to make that more difficult, because now even the conservative side seems to be torn a little bit on how to address this?
I think probably it won't matter. I think that the Governor Brownback will be confirmed by the Senate, and I think the legislature, they're going to go home and listen to their constituents on all sides of all the issues, and I think it won't matter as much. I think the frustration with some of the Republicans was that they thought, well, at least let's not, maybe he could help us by solving some of these difficult issues, and I think he made it a little bit more difficult, but probably in the long run, it probably won't matter.
Sure. We're talking with Alan Cobb with the Kansas Chamber of Commerce. A few minutes left with you, but what should we put pressure on now? What should we really focus on to hold our elected officials accountable for? Is it to try and do a tax repeal? Is that too much for this year? Should we try and coast through this year just without, saying it's successful without a tax increase this year, and work towards the elections at the end of the year? What should we be really putting pressure on them to do or not to do for this session?
I think there's probably three things. One is have your legislators support a constitutional amendment, a real constitutional amendment that's substantive and good, that still, you can make sure that we're going to fund schools, but yet the Supreme Court is taken out of it. Two is just no new taxes. We're not going to cut taxes this year. Just don't raise them because of these other spending priorities. Three is please, let's start taking a harder look and critical look at what we are spending on, what we're spending money on. Are we really doing it the most efficient way? I think there's some legitimate concerns about some cuts that have been made, but yet I think they've been willy-nilly, and maybe we're cutting the wrong things and increasing spending on the other on things that maybe aren't efficient. I guess the fourth thing would be, let's start taking a look at those August and November elections, and can we find the right candidates and support the right candidates? They're going to get Kansas back on a better track.
There it is. That was with Alan Cobb with the Kansas Chamber of Commerce. Information you're not going to get anywhere else. Why? Because we're going to actually look at the issue rather than just play the emotional argument that many do. Lots coming up here. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay tuned.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
Hey, good morning to you. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. Appreciate you hanging out with us today on a Monday morning, starting your day the right way. That's what we're all about, trying to get you pumped up, excited to head off to work. Maybe you're getting done from work and you're trying to decompress a little bit. Well, if that's the case, you're not going to get the decompression here on the Voice of Reason. Why? Because we're just too excited at 6 a.m. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. The discussion that we had with Alan Cobb with the Kansas Chamber of Commerce is very interesting. Look, I'm a happy-go-lucky kind of guy. I really am. I know it's tough doing that, being in politics, which is why I totally understand when Governor Brownback tries to do things that are unpopular and he tries to play both sides of the aisle kind of thing. I get it, because you try and be nice and you try and pander to everybody because you don't like people being upset with you. Unfortunately, this is politics. Unfortunate, and even Donald Trump tries to do the same thing. He talks tough, but at the same time, you have that kind heart, that kind spirit, and when you talk to him personally one-on-one, which I have not done as of yet, I would like to at some point, hopefully, but you hear it from everybody that talks to him, whether they're in government or outside of government, that he's just a really nice guy. When you have dinner with him, he's just one of those that likes to learn about you, learn about your craft, learn about your career, learn about what you do, learn about what your goals and dreams are. He wants to honestly learn about that, regardless of who you are, by the way. Regardless of your skin color, regardless of your heritage, regardless of anything, he does not care. You always heard about when he was owning and operating his business that he was out with the construction guys talking to the construction workers 90% of the time because he's honestly intrigued, because he's a down-to-earth kind of guy. That's what we need in politics again, and that gets looked and frowned upon by many on the opposite side of the aisle. Why? Because they are the elitists. That how dare you look at the peons, the peasants, we should be lording over them. Why are you pandering to them? You should be smiling and waving and do the photo op to look like you care about them, but you shouldn't really care about them. We're supposed to be managing them. We're supposed to be controlling them. And that is the mindset of the majority of progressives, because they're the professors. They're the elites. They are the doctors. They are the whatever. And I'm not saying all doctors are like that, because many of them are not. But that's the thought. So when Donald Trump tries to be relatable to the average common folk, he gets looked frowned upon because you need to act presidential. How dare you say those words like that? You should be acting presidential. Governor Sam Brownback trying to relate. Hey, you know what? I used to be a teacher. My children are teachers. I understand teaching. I understand the education system. Nope. Governor Brownback hates puppy dogs and children because he will not fund education to the way that we want him to do so. So what does he do? His final session, trying to pander, be nice, tries to give them the money. It's just not good enough. While he caves in to the Supreme Court because, well, we just need to follow the rule of law, and if they tell us we need more money, then we need to get them more money. It's unfortunate that we have people that are just too kind-hearted in politics that get walked all over, because that's the nature of the beast. That is politics. I think I told you this before, but when I started getting into politics, I was originally going to major in astronomy and physics because I like that. I like the science. I like the math. I like the mindset, the theory of looking out into space and thinking about what the universe means and so on and so forth. I love all that. It's very interesting to me. And then I got into politics, and everybody, including all my teachers, by the way, at the time, which was my junior year of high school, I started taking a government class. I started taking a forensics class, started doing high school debate. I started doing these things, and all of my peers and my friends and even my teachers were like, Andy, don't get into politics. You're too nice. You're too nice. You're going to get walked all over. You're just too nice of a guy. Don't get into politics. And then you had to toughen up a little bit because I'm a softie. I want everybody to be successful. I want everybody, regardless of political affiliation, regardless of skin color, regardless of gender identification, regardless of whatever, I want everybody to succeed and do well and flourish. And when they play the victim, when they don't step up to the challenge, when they just sit back and they whine and they complain and they find excuse after excuse, and you don't see someone match the requirements that they need to in order to see them succeed, it breaks my heart. And you don't know what to do for them. And emotionally, you just want to give it to them because, well, you know what? You want them to succeed, but at the same time, is that really going to help them? No. You got to do the tough love mentality, and they don't like that for some reason. Hour number 2, The Voice Reason, coming up. Lots to get to today. It's a Monday. It's going to be a fun Monday. Stay tuned. Hour number 2 of The Voice Reason.
It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 2 of the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker. 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. I don't know what's going on with it. I do apologize if you're trying to watch it. It's driving me nuts this morning. If you're on the Facebook Live feed trying to figure out what's going on with the show, I do apologize. I'm trying to work on it on this side, but it's not wanting to connect properly. It's skipping quite a bit and kind of freezing up. So I am working on that. Not sure what's happening there, but technology likes to do that once in a while. Maybe it's because it's cold, and I don't like the cold very much because it's very cold, and it's, by the way, cold. It is a Monday. So let's start it off the right way. What do you say? It's time to get pumped up, excited for the day, excited for the week. This is where you set the tone. This is where you have the mindset mentally to either want to utilize it or complain about it. We're not about that, are we?
Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
721-8255-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. Coming up in hour number 3, we have State Representative Shelee Brim. She is going to be joining us, recapping week number 1 of the legislative session and what to expect from this week. As we begin to debate certain policy, we start to figure out what we're going to do in the state of Kansas. We'll talk with her coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, but until then, it is open lines to you, 721-8255-721-TALK. You can shoot me a message all over social media as well, Facebook, Twitter, on the Voice of Reason page, the KQAM page, the Facebook Live. You can shoot me a message, and I will see it if the video actually decides to want to run and operate the way that it actually needs to. Again, we will work on that when we get an opportunity to do so as well. Let's kick off hour number 2 with a phone call. What do you say? Good morning. What's your name?
Scott.
Good morning, Scott. What's going on, sir?
Well, this is Martin Luther King Day, and unfortunately, over the weekend they dishonored King because they had a King event, and they actually had a nerve to involve giving some type of award to a policeman. And I'm thinking, I said, now wait a minute, Dr. King got beat up by the police, and they never did apologize to him for beating him
now
when he was trying to fight for his right.
Sure. Now, hold on. Now, the police officer that got the award, is he one that has committed any police brutality?
Well, now, he's the chief of police here, so now we already know he got somebody killed due to his officers.
By his decision?
Excuse me?
By his decision? Because remember, hold on, wait, hold on. I want you to answer it, but I also want to clarify, too, that if we're going to, just like anybody else with whether you're wearing a uniform or the color of the skin, that we don't generalize and lump in the entire organization or the entire race is good or bad, but we look at the character of each individual, which is exactly what Martin Luther King had talked about. He did talk about police brutality, but he also talked about judging based on the character of the individual. So did the police chief that won the award, is he one that has advocated for police brutality or encouraged violence of police, or was it the act of somebody else that may have been under his jurisdiction, but he was not there to make that decision at that time? Is that his fault?
One thing for sure, it was somebody that was under him, under his leadership.
Okay.
Just like Bull Connor had police beating Dr. King, those police were under Bull Connor's leadership.
Sure. Now, okay, so it's under his leadership, so he can take some responsibility to that. So for the proper response to that, to the actions of his officers that are under him, has he advocated for them to stay on the force, or has he advocated for them to stay on the payroll while they do the investigation, or has he complied by allowing them to be on leave during the time of the investigation and follow the procedures to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Well, as far as I know, he claims that he can't release the name of them. He can't.
Well, sure, you can't.
Do
You can't
anything
open.
but what the union says he can do, I suppose. So somehow their contract doesn't give the city any leeway. It only gives leeway to the union and those who are in the union.
Well, not just the union, but you can't release information to the public when it's under investigation, just like anything else. With the shooting in Las Vegas, during the time of the investigation, which I think is still ongoing, if it's under investigation, then it cannot be released to the public until it's allowed to be released to the public. So that's really out of his hands right now until they close the case, right?
Well, to me, it seemed like if you're an employee, you're supposed to be identifiable to the employer. So the employer should know what you're doing at all times on his job. And they, as police, are the employees of the citizens of Wichita. And so we should know who they are and what they're doing. And for them to keep that information from us seems to be some type of conspiracy.
All right, well, let me ask you this then. If there is a terrorist attack in the same hypothetical situation that coincides with this, if there is a terrorist attack and the FBI, the CIA, all the internal, the Department of Defense, whoever, Homeland Security, they're all doing the investigation to try and figure out where they got the bomb, where they got the tools to make the bomb, who's actually involved with this, and they're trying to keep it closed so that way they can prevent it from the next time. Is it our duty to say, even though it's a private internal investigation, we need to know all the details about it as the public right here and right now and give that to us? Do you believe that we should have that information automatically too?
You know, when you have a terrorist attack, that's already, public is already going to know about that because, if they've been attacked, if you get attacked, if you're talking about a possible threat, that's different. But attack, people already know what's happening because they've been hit already. That's just like
they know that they got
hit. People knew before the police did.
They know they got hit, but they don't know who hit them or what actually happened. The same with the Las Vegas attacker and the shooter. We still don't know a lot of information there, which I would like to know, but it's still under investigation. So how long do we have to wait? I don't know. Hopefully they'll close the case relatively soon, but they need to know how they got the guns up there, if there was more than one shooter. I mean, the stuff still doesn't add up there, but it was a terrorist attack, quote unquote, in that sense, and we want to know answers there, but we have to wait, unfortunately, for the investigation to be done. Scott, I appreciate the call, my friend. I want to take another one here, but happy Martin Luther King Day to you. This is the reason I wanted to go down that road, and the reason I asked those questions the way I did was because what Martin Luther King preached in his speech, the I Have a Dream speech, and what he advocated for at those times gets frowned upon today by many of the same advocates that hold him up to be the leader of civil rights movements. Just as Scott had done, which I know Scott's intentions are good because he wants to make a community a better place, but this is what we're doing. We are lumping and categorizing based on class, based on a uniform, based on skin color. What's the message that we hear from many of the Black Lives Matter, the extremists in the Black Lives Matter organization today? What's the message that we hear from many extreme advocates on college campuses today? Or the protesters of Donald Trump today, that if you're white, you are distinctively, biologically, genetically racist. That everybody judges someone based on the color. And that's not what Martin Luther King had taught.
I have a dream that my poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
That's exactly what we live by and what conservatives live by. Ideologically, that's exactly what we live by as conservatives. That's not what you hear in the media. That if you're conservative, if you're white, I told you the story about my brother at Fort Collins University. It's Colorado State. It's in Fort Collins up in Colorado. That the teacher told him because he's white and because he has two parents that are still together, he is the problem with society because he is privileged. That white privilege thing that everything's been given to him. Everything's been given to his family, to myself, to my brother, and to my sister, that we have been given everything because we have parents that are still together and we're white. So therefore, our white privilege has led to us. That's by default against everything that what Martin Luther King had preached about by judging someone based on their character. Because what do they teach us? That as a white individual, we walk into a store, we see a black individual or an Asian individual or a Native American individual, that we automatically judge them because of that skin color, that's our genetics of what we do as a white person. And that's not what we were taught. The only way, and I've advocated for this for years and years and years, the only way that we will end racism, the only way that we will get rid of racism is to not talk about race, not think about race, period, end of story. Whether you're white, whether you're black, whether you're Hispanic, whether you're Asian, whether you're Native American, whatever, you don't talk about race. You look at somebody and you look at their character, you look at their soul, you look at the actions that they do in public. If they're out looting a store, regardless of what skin color there are, then you're going to judge them based on the action that they did. If they attack a police officer or the police officer attacks somebody else, you judge them based on that individual, not based on the entire uniform. The entire police force is not a police force of brutality wanting to impose its will onto racial minorities. That's not the way it works. Half the police force is a racial minority. Because everybody wants to be involved in the police force. Everybody wants to try and make their communities a better place, which is why they join the force. Are there bad apples? Sure, there's bad apples in every workplace. You go to your job today and you work and you see somebody that's a complete idiot that doesn't know how to actually do their job, but the union may be protecting them. You see someone that just doesn't know how to do their job, doesn't have much of a work ethic, maybe sick every single day, and you're picking up the slack because your boss needs you to, because the job still needs to get done, but they have no idea how to actually accomplish their job. Regardless of racial skin color, regardless of heritage. We've forgotten that message because we've been so partisan, we've been so divided because of what the progressives have done to us, because of what the politicians have done to us, because of what the progressive elites have done to us. They want us to think that just by genetics we are grown to be racist and that we judge everyone by their skin color, and I'm not going to have it anymore. If you want to advocate for equality, you live by that speech, that you judge someone based on their character. If someone did something wrong, and if an officer did something wrong, we will hold them accountable, and the investigation will take place as it is right now in many cases for the local stuff here in Wichita. But that doesn't mean that you lump up the entire law enforcement scale and say, all of them are bad. You don't do that. That's the exact same thing as a white person saying all black people are bad, or all black people saying all white people are bad. You're generalizing to the entire thing, which is against the entire principle of what Martin Luther King spoke about. Let's go to the phone, shall we? 721-825-5721 talk. Good morning. What's your name?
Eddie.
Eddie, good morning, sir. How are you, my friend?
I have one quick question, then I have a comment.
Okay.
The quick question is, the owner of the station about a week ago, he kind of hinted that, are you guys going to possibly up your power on your FM side for your show?
Eventually, yes, we are working on that. It's a work in progress to try and to be able to raise the tower for the FM, so that way we have more of a coverage on there. So hopefully we'd like to see that sometime this year. Absolutely.
Beautiful, beautiful. And my other comment is that I don't know about Trump, whether he said it or didn't said it, but isn't it kind of weird or ironic or something like that these politicians and people that are coming out and they're really giving Trump the devil for it. Andy, these people live in gated communities to keep people out. Sure. They live in gated communities.
Absolutely. They don't want to be around society. They are the elites that don't want to be around everybody. They're afraid that everybody's going to come in and steal their stuff. They're afraid that that they're going to have to be around the peasants of society, so they build themselves their nice little gated community, which I got nothing against gated communities, but they build their own home with a gate or a fence or a wall around the entire thing. What was it that Zuckerberg had a Facebook bought the 3 properties next to him, so that way he wouldn't have to live near anybody. You see all these celebrities that build the wall around their entire mansion because they don't want to be around everybody. At the same time, they're saying tear down the walls and let's bring in more refugees because we need to be loving and caring. We have Bernie Sanders that has bought us 3 vacation homes. While he complains about inequality in the country. This is the hypocrisy of the left-wing progressives, because they don't practice what they preach, and they want us to suffer while they're the ones living in luxury, because that's how they view the world of the peasants in the caste system, as opposed to the lords and the leaders that they are, or at least they feel that they are.
I know. And as far as Martin Luther King, he was a wonderful man, and we all need to listen to his words. Because his words were that you and I and all the rest of the black community should just get together, hold hands, and let's have a wonderful life instead of being divisive.
Exactly.
That's not right.
That's exactly.
And anyway, I just want to wish you a beautiful day, sir, and I thoroughly enjoy you. And you tell the owner of your company, get that tower up in the air, because if you know me, I've been driving to radio stations and radio towers ever since I was big enough to ride a bicycle, and so Anyway, you take care and have the most beautiful day.
Eddie, I appreciate it very much, my friend. No, you're absolutely right. And you brought me some history on KQAM and the AM side of that a while ago, and I do appreciate that. It's fascinating to listen to the history of the frequencies and the stations in different communities and how they've grown and how they've adapted and evolved and what they're into today. So, yes, eventually that is the goal, to be able to get the power up at some point, because we would like to be able to get some more coverage on there. So, Eddie, I appreciate that very much. Let's go back to the phones before we take a break. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, happy Monday.
Myron, what's going on, sir?
Oh, I just can't understand how you can miss your white privilege, Andy, because your wife is Native, and so she should be able to tell you, since she's a member of a victim class, like Black Lives and other lives, she should be able to tell you right when you get out of bed what your white privilege is.
Yeah, how much more privilege I have over her because she's Native American, and therefore I have abilities in society that are above and beyond her that she'll never be able to exceed or match because of the fact that she has a different skin color and that we have treated her people horribly throughout the ages, and therefore she has less opportunity in society today than I do as a married couple. Yes.
Yeah, I'll always treasure Thomas Sowell. There's three things that a person needs to do that virtually assures they will become middle class. You get your high school education, you marry before you have a child, and you work.
But now you're just talking craziness. I mean, and Myra and I appreciate, we got to take a break here. But you're right. We were actually talking about that over the weekend, was the young generation, the millennials, where the marriage rates are extremely down because they just want to have fun as opposed to actually settle down. They're not having kids, so it's not going to be paying for social programs. And then they complain about the victimhood. Many of them, they're staying in their parents' basement. They don't have enough money. They're paying on student loans. They're paying on X, Y, and Z. And they're completely disrupting the way society has been kind of foundationally set to provide for them and for their children down the road. And everything's going to be thrown out of whack here very quickly. And then on top of that, then you throw in the race card of the fact that of the idea of white privilege and the division that we have and the resegregation that many of them want to do, totally against the entire mindset of what Martin Luther King had preached, while they're still the ones hyping up, saying that they're advocating for the ideas of Martin Luther King. It just doesn't make any sense to me. 25 minutes past the hour. Your thoughts and calls when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Went a little long in that last segment. That's all right. Appreciate all the phone calls. We love it. We want some more of it. That's the way we roll, to quote Tim McGraw. 721-825-5721-TALK. I do have to say, I am really, really honored and proud of the fact that this show, unlike any other talk show, really reaches a different demographic that normally would not listen to talk radio. And it's because we're not afraid to talk about issues like this. And we're on the right side of it. And that's why we have individuals in certain communities that usually wouldn't listen to talk radio listening to this show, and we love that, and thank you so much for doing so. I want to hear from you on these types of discussions. Bottom of the hour news coming up. Lots more coming up. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Wichita's fastest growing radio show. You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Must see that Israel must exist and has a right to exist and is one of the great outposts of democracy in the world.
My Jewish brothers and sisters said to me amid anti-Semitism anywhere, and we don't need your support. I would still take a stand against anti-Semitism because it's wrong, it's unjust, and it's evil.
It's very interesting how the progressives try and take a hold of Martin Luther King and use them for their own political agenda, when in today's times, it almost seems he would be a flaming right-wing nutso conservative standing for Israel, talking about the founding fathers, saying don't judge someone based on the skin color, but based on the character of the individual. How do you know that just because that there's a white individual, they're all of a sudden a former slave owner as their ancestor, or that they have judgmental views on individuals with certain skin colors? That's what we're being taught in society. Go to a college university today and talk about this, and you'll see that they teach that all of a sudden you are by default a racist, and that you should give up your belongings to, that you should apologize for being white, that you have this white privilege, and so on and so forth, just because by default you have a different skin color. And this is exactly what was against the founding and what was against the movement by Martin Luther King.
I have a dream that my poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
It goes both ways in doing so. 316-721-8255. I wasn't going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but it's a very interesting conversation, and today's a perfect day for us to be able to do so, as we are celebrating Martin Luther King Day today. And I want to hear from you on this, because I truly honestly want, as a conservative, as that heartless individual that only focuses on stats and facts and numbers instead of the emotions of individuals, and we don't care about everybody because all we care about is the evil corporations and the big money and so on and so forth. I want to spend today as a conservative, as a constitutionalist, to remember exactly what our founding fathers had taught us on all men created equal under God for the chance of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. All men, no matter what skin color you are, no matter no matter where your heritage came from, that you have the ability for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the defense of private property, the defense of individualism, the defense of your own personal sovereignty, that you have that ability. You have to remember that the founding fathers came from, and yes, they did have slavery at that time. Was it right? Absolutely not. Was that the norm of society at that time? Yes. There was nothing they could do. It was already the most radical movement that we have ever seen, by a group of individuals convening together and saying that right now we are in a caste system to where we have to look up to the king to everything. We have to ask the king permission to do anything that we want to as a people. And that's not right. Because when we wrote the Declaration of Independence, we wrote that we have God-given rights, natural rights, whatever you want to call them. They called them God-given rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life, liberty, and property. Life, liberty, and self-defense. That we have those rights ourselves. They're not granted by the king and we ask for permission to utilize them. They're already given to us, and anybody that infringes upon them are violators of those rights. And it is not only the right for us to do so, but it's also our duty to do so, to stand up to those sovereign tyrants that try to abuse that power and tell them no more. You're no longer going to control what we do on a daily basis. You're no longer going to control my life. You're no longer going to control my aspect by taxing me to death just to try and live. See what we're doing today? We forgot all about that. We have those God-given rights not granted by the government, and that's where we've fallen. Because today, what do you see? You try to see the protected classes. You see affirmative action for certain minority groups. You try and see free college. You try and see free this. You try and see free that. You try and see that the only way the LGBTQ communities is gonna get free rights is if you have them granted and protected specifically by the government. So we have a protected class. Well, just as easily as they can grant them, the government can take them away, because that's not the duty of the government. We form a government to protect those rights by saying you have them and no one's going to infringe on them. And if anybody does infringe on them, then we'll come after them. That's the purpose of government. And that's why mankind feels the need for a form of government, for the rule of law, to protect those natural rights, not to give them to you, but to make sure that you already have them in the first place and that no one shall infringe upon them. And when you talk like that, people go nuts today. Progressives lose their minds. Progressives don't know how to respond to that because they only believe in protected classes. And if they heard Martin Luther King speak today, they would lose their minds and call him, they would say that he has given up his culture. He has given up his mindset. He has given up his ideas. He has compromised on what they're fighting for because he believed in the Founding Fathers. He did not call the Founding Fathers a bunch of racists, white supremacists, property owners and landowners, slave owners, and that therefore by default that they were bad. Yeah, they had their flaws, like everybody else, even like society does today. But he did not see those flaws. He saw those as the ones that created a form of government, that created a document, that created a mindset of the American dream, of American exceptionalism, that we have the opportunity in our land, more so than any other land on the face of the earth, to where we can enjoy it because we're moving in the right direction, making people free. Giving them equal opportunity, not equal outcome, because outcome means that you had to redistribute, move things around, take some from others to give to others, and we're not about that. We're not about socialism. We're not about free goodies. We're not about free handout, or we shouldn't be, at least. Sometimes we kind of fall down that road. But we're not intended to be that way. We're about equal opportunity for everybody. And the progressives don't like that. They don't like equal opportunity, because then the ones that they do despise had the same opportunity as the ones that are their same old brothers in their own little closed, little knit group. But Martin Luther King speaking of the Founding Fathers.
So we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Quoting the Founding Fathers on what the intent of this nation was supposed to be. If you did that today, you would be cast aside, you would be dismissed, you would be labeled as a radical, you would be labeled as a Tea Party nutjob racist conservative, because everybody just should know by default that the Founding Fathers were racist, that they were landowners, that they were white, that they were slave owners, and therefore no matter what they said or what they did, didn't matter. That we should not hold up their documents or their ideas true because they were hypocrites in that time by saying that all men were created equal while still owning slaves at the same time. That's not what Martin Luther King preached about, but that's what you hear about today in society from certain communities, from certain college professors. And when you say that, then you're spitting on every single thing that Martin Luther King had advocated for.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
When was the last time that you heard a progressive of any skin color say something like that? When was the last time that you heard the civil rights advocates today say those things, holding up the idea of American exceptionalism, American dream, and how great the country is, instead of apologizing? All we heard for the last 8 years on the last administration was how we need to apologize for who we are, apologize for what we've done, apologize for our history, apologize for what the nation was built upon, because it was built on the backs of slaves, and therefore we should be ashamed of who we are as a nation, that there is no such thing as the American dream. There is no such thing as American exceptionalism, and that's what we need to remember, and that's what we need to be taught at our college level. That's what's being spread around the world today. When there was a time when we fought for equal opportunity for everybody, when we fought for equality for everybody regardless of race, when we actually built ourselves and built that argument on the backs of the nation. And what do we see today? We see protesters in the NFL kneeling because of the national anthem. We see them kneeling because we have systematic racism in our culture, right? We have a society built with racism intertwined into the intricate system that is the United States, right? That all cops should be portrayed as pigs and terrible abusers of power, because we like to generalize now. Instead of looking at the character, we're looking at the skin color. We're looking at the uniform. We look at what they wear every single day, and then we judge based on that, not based on the actions of the individual, not as the groupthink mentality. The only way that we will start getting rid of racism, the only way that we will begin to battle these things is to start looking again at the individual and the character of that individual. If you're robbing a store, regardless of what skin color you are, that's what you're judged upon and what you're going to be punished for. If you murder somebody, regardless of what skin color you are, that's going to be your judgment, not based on your skin color. If you're in society and you're helping out your community and you're helping out the people with less, and you're helping out and you're doing what you can, regardless of your skin color, that's what you're going to be judged upon in a positive way, as opposed to your skin color. But in today's times, with the progressives leading the charge, with the progressives leading the discussion, with the professors leading and trying to teach the young generation about racism and about systematic racism or whatever the hell they want to call it, no longer do we have that, because now we get to look at skin color and base someone negatively on skin color. And now we're just fueling the fire of racism as opposed to trying to put out the fire of racism. We have long work ahead of us because we've gone in the wrong direction for a long time, and now it's time to redirect ourselves, get back on track, turn the chuck around, and start heading down the highway that is towards the end of racism, and that is, again, disregarding skin color and looking directly at character. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay tuned.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
It's a beautiful thing, making it happen today on a Monday morning, starting off your week the best way that we know how, the fastest growing radio show in the entire state of Kansas. Why? Because you guys are just freaking awesome like that. I don't know what else to say about it. 721-8255-721-TALK if you're going to join into the program. This portion of The Voice of Reason on a Monday brought to you by the AARP, whether it's the Fraud Watch Network, the Retirement Calculator, getting prepared for the later days of life, or maybe just getting involved in the community, no matter what you're doing. The best way to do so is with the AARP. Check them out, aarp.org/KS for the state of Kansas. Marin Turner on the line with us. Mary, we had on last week. Marin Turner on with us this morning. Good morning to you. Happy 2018.
Hi, and good morning, and Happy New Year to you as well.
Happy Martin Luther King Day. I think today's a fun way to kick off a brand new week. There's a lot going on statewide, and you guys are really involved kicking off a new year, really in a really special way as well. With the AARP Day tomorrow in Atwater. Everybody can go out and check that out, along with some of the events you have coming up in the community.
Absolutely. We hope that throughout the year people will join us at the Atwater. We have AARP Day every third Tuesday. It's a great time to just come out, meet us, tell us what's on your mind, learn a few things, and just share some coffee and donuts.
Absolutely. Now, you guys have been working on some, we usually don't talk a whole lot about legislation, but you guys have been working on some legislation that did go through, and Congressman Estes being able to help push that through, now sitting on the president's desk. Talk about what that is.
Yes, we are so thankful for Representative Ron Estes. He was one of the co-sponsors of the RAISE Family Caregiver Act, and RAISE stands for Recognize, Assist, Include, Support, and Engage. This is a piece of legislation that directs the Secretary of the Health and Human Services Department to develop a strategy to support family caregivers and to bring together the public and the private sector. And Representative Estes was one of the co-sponsors and actually led the floor debate on this particular bill. So we are so thankful for him and his leadership on behalf of all of the caregivers in Kansas and across the country.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a push that you guys have been working on for a long time with the CARE Act and with taking care of caregivers and trying to train some more and trying to make that opportunity easier for others and be able to increase the workers on the caregivers. How are we starting to pan out in the state? Are we seeing the quality go up? I know this year could be a potential really successful year to make that make some more gains in that.
We are definitely tracking that. The CARE Act here in Kansas will not go into effect until July. But we are working with partners to educate the public about the importance of supporting caregivers. So we're looking forward to 2018.
Absolutely. If people want to get a hold of you guys with the AARP, with some of the other events, I know you just had a movie for grown-ups. That's going to be coming up again pretty soon. We've talked about the fun Pokemon Go, or the different ways to, once it warms up, going out into the different parks and communities. But if people want to get involved, of course, they can go to the in Atwater for the AARP Day. But how else can they get a hold of you guys?
Well, we're hoping that they'll also join us on Wednesday at the Botanica at 10 o'clock. Our advocacy volunteers will be getting together to talk about our strategy to work with our state legislators this year. You can contact us at 1-866-448-3619 for more information, or you can always log on to our website, www.aarp.org/KS.
I love it, Marin Turner with the AARP. Always great to chat with you. Have a wonderful Monday, and we'll chat with you again next week.
Thanks, Andy.
Always a pleasure there. That's the AARP. Check them out, aarp.org/KS. It brings up an interesting topic when it comes to, with the discussion we've had this hour, when it comes to Martin Luther King Day and the comments that he made and what we do. The media has always, they love the division. They love the argument. That's what creates news for them, because then they can report on, oh, look at the tension happening here. Oh, look at the mishaps from the law enforcement here. Oh, look at what these protesters are doing here, and it's justified because of X, Y, and Z. And they always love to show the anger, the hatred, and the division. What we've noticed, what I've noticed at least, maybe you've done the same, is that in local communities, that's not the way it is. People don't really judge on skin color, which is a good thing. People don't do what the media tells them's happening in the world. There are some that like to do that because they like their 5 minutes of fame to be in the media, to say that, hey, I was part of that movement and I was able to advocate for X, Y, and Z, and I fought this, and I fought the man. And they did a lot of that. But most of us in normal communities, we live harmoniously together. We live happily together. We take care of our brothers and our sisters and our neighbors across from us, beside us, on the other side of town from us, because we like a happy community. And when we do that, and the majority of small communities end up doing that, then they have nothing to complain about. They have nothing to fight. They have nothing to report on, because there's nothing there. They can say it all they want to till they're blue in the face, but hashtag fake news is running rampant right now. And no matter what the media tries to tell you, sometimes it's just not true. They try and set the stage for your mindset to go into the world thinking a certain way, but it's just not true. The world is not full of crazy radical racists wanting to harm you every step of the way. Are there some? Sure. But they're the only ones that get attention in the media. Why? Because the media wants you to believe that they're lurking at every corner. They're going to harm you in every way. They're going to attack you every chance that they possibly can get. And that's just not the case. And when the local communities start to realize that and we just take care of our own, then they got nothing to complain about. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. Hour number 3, The Voice of Reason, coming up. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
Well, politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker. 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. It is hour number 3. It's still snowing outside. Can you believe this? I guess I've been here, 3 years now? This is the third winter that I've been in Kansas for, at least in Wichita. I was out in Garden City for a few years as well. Well, being in Wichita, and this is really the first good snow that I've seen in 3 years. We've had a few little dustings here and there over the last couple of years, but this is really the first snow that we've got to experience it is very interesting. It would have been nice to see this during Christmas for a white Christmas, but at least we're getting it to some degree. We're getting some moisture. Everybody's happy about that. Happy, finally, winter. Al Gore has prevented it long enough, and now we can finally enjoy the the natural seasons that is called winter in the state of Kansas. It's a Monday. Let's go ahead and get it started. Time to get you pumped up, started for the day, excited for the day. We got a lot to get to, especially when it comes to the legislative session in 2018 for the state of Kansas. What do we get to expect?
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
721-8255-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. Whatever's on your mind, anything we've talked about, not talked about, you're more than welcome to do so. Happy Martin Luther King Day as well. And what a weekend it's been with the politics at the statewide level, at the federal level. This is week number 2 of the legislative session. Now, not much happened last week as maybe some bills were introduced. A little discussion happened. The big blow up with Governor Sam Brownback doing his State of the State address that didn't appease Democrats because they think he's the worst person in the world anyways. But it didn't appease a lot of conservatives either because has he officially caved in to the Supreme Court to try and pander for the additional $600 million in education? And that was really the only issue that he discussed in his legislative session. Let's go to the phones and talk a little bit about that and so much more. I'm really excited to have her on. She's first time she's come on The Voice of Reason. She's representative from District Number 39. It's Shelee Brim on the line with us. Shelee, good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's great to get you on here. And what a first week it was. I didn't think it was going to be that big, but once the governor spoke, things kind of really, started off strong.
It did. The speech was very good, very positive and everything, but there just wasn't a whole lot of guidance on how to get to where he was sending us. I said it was kind of like the Wizard of Oz, but no yellow brick road on how to get there.
Well, talk about the mindset up there right now. I know that we're going into a tense session, and whether it's going to be trying to play nice because of midterm elections coming up in November, or whether it's going to be the all-out brawl, kind of like what we saw last session with waiting to the last minute to do massive tax increases and additional spending at the state level. What's your mindset right now? What's kind of the feeling walking through the halls and seeing everybody in the chamber? Are they ready for a big battle, or do you think it's going to be a little bit calmer this year?
We've got a great group of people up there who want to do the right thing. And, that group, I think, in 2016 grew. I was elected and had not been in there before. So this is the only thing I know. I don't know what's happened in the past as far as being physically in there. Mm-hmm. But I've heard, from everyone saying it is more positive, even though we have a lot of heavy issues ahead for us. But we're ready. We're ready to go in there and bring Kansas back. So it's still very positive, but we do know we have some big ticket items ahead.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be, I almost see this one as big, or if not bigger than last year, because last year we knew we had to do something when it came to the budget with either tax hikes or spending decreases. And we know which direction we went in that one. But then we did some spending increases as well. This year, we have, this could be the opportunity, and I am excited about this fact. This could be the opportunity that we have to finally settle for good, or at least for a long period of time, the issue with the school finance, with the formula, with the Supreme Court's qualifications and mandates that they put upon you guys. And this could be the year that we finally settle that if we do the right thing. Are you optimistic that we can actually have a long-term goal on how to settle the education dispute for now?
I'm always that person that, I'm the half, not the half full. It's always full. There's 100% there in the glass. So I'm very optimistic. We've got the number that the governor sent out there. The difficult part is going to be trying to figure out where to get that money to pay for it.
Sure.
But I do think we have an opportunity ahead of us to get in there and really solve this problem. I don't know if you're aware, but I taught school for 32 years. So education is very much at the forefront of my mind.
Sure. And so you've seen it firsthand exactly what goes along in the classroom and what struggles that the teachers actually have, which, advocating for more for salary hikes for the school teachers, I am absolutely all for. We need to make sure to take care of the students in the classroom and the teachers. But a lot of times that gets kind of thrown to the wayside when we start looking at more money for the school building improvements or more administrators or X, Y, and Z, and the teachers aren't actually able to do their jobs. So you actually get to see that firsthand and get to relate that to the legislators who may not understand that.
Absolutely. Spending 32 years in the classroom, I was on the front line, and I've seen, teachers don't go in to make $1 million. We go in to make a difference.
Sure.
But to have quality people want to go into education, we've got to keep those salaries up there, and to keep teachers living in, if you're in Johnson County, you're a teacher, if you're single, it's hard to find housing even close to many of the schools because it doesn't offset the cost of living.
Sure.
So we've got to keep those salaries there. And as far as outfitting your classroom, people just think that the classroom, you go in and all those things are already there. They're not. The bookcases, when you go in, they're empty. Those you get from donations, going to garage sales and everything else. And in my school district that I taught in, our budget for the year for our classroom expenses was $150, which that's spent before the school year ever even starts with all the things that you get to outfit your classroom,
It breaks my heart. I've heard that story numerous times to where the teachers, not only are they not getting compensated properly, in my opinion, and they kind of get walked upon when we're talking about school finance, but then at the same time, then you walk in and you have none of your resources. You got to buy the posters to put on the wall and buy the erasers and buy the crayons and have to buy the Kleenex boxes and whatever else you have to bring into the classroom for the children. And I don't understand why that's the responsibility of the teachers instead of the actual district to say, here's the resources for you to be able to actually do your job. It makes no sense to me. I saw the story during the tax reform at the federal level in that debate where the Teachers Union of America was all upset because we're going to get rid of the tax write-off of $600 for teachers to be able to buy the stuff for their classroom, when we're not furiated in the first place of the fact that we even have to spend that kind of money in the classroom from the teachers out of their own pockets.
You are right on target there. And fortunately, the district I retired from, we had a lot of families that were willing to donate items, and our PTO was very helpful. But I've also taught in other districts where the families they're not able to do that. And everything is out of your pocket. And not only that, you have that student that comes to school and doesn't have a nice winter coat or gloves or hats, and you stop at Walmart on the way home and you grab those things. Or, you have an extended holiday weekend like this weekend, and you send home a little stash of crackers and, different granola bars and things so that that student has some food, because it may be they go home and they just don't have a filled refrigerator and a nice kitchen with good food.
Sure.
So you take care of those needs as well.
It breaks my heart. You're not just the teacher, but you're also the comforter, and you also are almost that second parent trying to take care of them children. We're talking with State Representative Shelee Brim, District number 39. Outside of education finance, which may, is going to be the ongoing battle throughout this entire session, this week number 2, a few bills have been presented in the legislature last week. Not really a whole lot of discussion. The discussion is going to heat up starting this week. What do you anticipate to start coming to the floors first off as we continuously behind the scenes work on the bigger projects?
I've only had one committee meeting yet so far. My committee I'm on transportation, veterans and military, and higher education budget. So mine pick up more this week. But, transportation is a key. We've swept money from KDOT, and we've got 23 unfunded building projects for T-Works, and that's a big concern. We want our roads to be safe for everyone out there because it affects everyone. And that's one issue that I think is going to come up, is we need to fund that and not sweep the money away. And I'm afraid that's going to be an issue again from what I've heard this year. Mm-hmm. So we will see what happens there with that. But I know pretty much everyone, we've got to keep that money there. We're just maintaining if at best. right now.
Sure. There's a lot of those small little projects between, like you mentioned, the highway projects, wanting to sink some more money into it, to the corrections facilities. We're trying to get the salary hikes, some more salary hikes potentially for corrections officers at the state prisons, that sort of thing. There's the little odds and ends that we need to start addressing. And the question is always going to be, how do we end up paying for it? Are there any talks of trying to comb through the budget, maybe move things around from stuff that may have a little fat to them to apply them to the places we need to? Are we talking about potentially more tax increases this year? What are we looking at to try and cover what needs to be covered at the state level?
With our tax issue last year, right now, I think the consensus is we don't want to increase any more taxes. So I think, one of my counterparts, Tom Cox, always uses this phrase. He said, we don't have to use a machete, but we can use a scalpel and start looking at things and start trimming away, little pieces here and there, and see if, a little bit here and a little bit there adds up.
Sure.
So I do think we need to do that, but we still have to fund our essential services, and, our hospitals and all those things that people rely on and expect. So it's going to be tricky.
Absolutely. It is going to be a tricky one for sure. Going along with that, one of the biggest expenditures we could have alongside of education is going to be that discussion of Medicaid. I was at the public forum just a few weeks ago and heard person after person after person after person advocating for that expansion of Medicaid. Is that going to be a potential that we need to be concerned about this year, and how do we pay for that one?
Yesterday morning, I went to the CanCare expansion. They had a little forum in Olathe, and I went to that. And I've been to several of those just to listen and get more information on that as well, and see what the public thinks. And it's strong for that. Jim Ward was also there, and he said to the people, it will be heard this year. So there's his word.
Well, that's concerning to me, because while we're trying to find the money just to find the funding for the small little things, we're looking at a Medicaid expansion that could potentially cost us up to $2 billion if the federal government does not chip in, which now that we've repealed the individual mandate at the federal level, they're not obligated to chip in any more money. They're already paying 54% of our Medicaid that we have right now from the federal grants coming in. But if we expand this, how much more could we honestly look at money coming in from the federal government?
Well, we were talking yesterday at that, and there is a caveat to that they would have the ability to, if it were to fall back onto the state 100%, that we could opt out at that point. So that was in there as well.
That would be an interesting way to do it, to try to expand it, and then if they don't cover it, then we can back out of it, and that way, before too much damage is done. I would go into that hesitantly, knowing the progressives and how easy it is for them to, well, we've already expanded it, we can't retract it now. Once we create the government program, we can't take it away now. But that is an interesting concept of how we could do it as a trial and error period to see how much money we'd be getting.
Right, and it is a lot of money that we have sent to other states. So,
sure.
There's a lot of our taxpayer money that are going to fund other states. So, that's a concern.
Sure, absolutely. We're talking with State Representative Shelee Brim. Just about a minute left here before we let you go. I know that the talks have been slow, as you mentioned, with the committee hearings and the topics on what's to come, but it's going to be an interesting session, and I almost see this as another building up the defense and walls the best we can, as we did last session, to see exactly what we can stop or at least slow down the growth of, and hopefully we're able to do so. So thank you so much for the fight that you have up there. Let's keep up the great work. I'd love to get you back on the show at a later time again.
That sounds good. Well, it's cold outside, but we're going to heat it up this week.
That we are. We're going to heat it up great. It's going to be a nice fire happening in Topeka. We could say nice and roasty, toasty, warm. Shelee, thank you so much for coming on the show. We would love to get you back on here soon.
You bet. Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Very good. Thank you so much. That's State Representative Shelee Brim, District number 39 right there. Let's take a break. We'll get your thoughts and calls wrapping up the show today. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM. Happy Monday morning to you. Happy Martin Luther King Day. Thanks again to State Representative Shelee Brim for joining us on the show. We'll get her back on as the session progresses. 721-8255-721 Talk. Let's go right to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, this is Myron for a minute.
Hey, good morning, sir. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great. Today I'm not quite twins, though. It's a little chilly out there.
It is a little cold, yes. Although, I'm mixed. I don't like the snow because I like places where it's nice and warm. But at the same time, it is a little homey, and you just want to curl up and not go anywhere today.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide whether I want to go buy a snowblower or not.
Exactly. There you go.
I don't think it's going to get enough. No, just a quick comment on Governor Brownback and his State of the State.
Yes.
In the last election, the Democrats and the rhinos got together, got themselves elected, raised taxes, didn't cut anything, and the Democrats and the rhinos think we need $600 million for schools. So Brownback saying, okay, the $600 million is in there, you figure out how to pay for it. I think it's perfect. This is what, the Republicans elected rhinos that voted with the Democrats to raise taxes. So now, to me, Brownback's saying, okay, you want $600 million? You got it. Figure out how to pay for it.
Exactly. And he did do that in a great way. I'm upset that he did that in the first place just because we shouldn't abide by the Supreme Court in this decision, in my opinion. But, they're all upset about how are we going to pay for it. That's the question we've been asking the entire time. How are you going to pay for it? He's looking at the short term. Fine. If you want $600 million, we'll do it incrementally to $100 million over the next 5 years or whatever in order to make it happen. Figure it out. And guess what? I'm giving you your cake and you can eat it too, because you can raise the spending and not have to raise taxes under my bill. Is it the best one? Probably not. So he's smarter in that sense. And Myron, I appreciate the call. He's smarter in that sense because he's giving them that option. They don't like it because it's not a good plan, because it's not a good idea in the first place. I'm upset that he did go down that road, but he did it in a very creative way. And now we have to figure out how to pay for it. The question is, where do we pay for any of this? We want the small little spending for small odds and end projects that we've been dismissing over the last few years. And now a few major projects with education and Medicaid. Where are we going to get the money? They're going to raise taxes is what they're going to do. Again. For a second, third, fourth, fifth time because, the state needs your money.
1480 AM and 102.5 FM. Keeping reason in the world of politics.
But if you're really angry, why in the first place are you not frustrated and angry to the fact that you have to spend $250 to $600 of your own cash to be able to provide resources in the classroom?
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. We talk about reason and common sense on this show in order to live, in a common sense world. Don't do drugs, okay? That sort of thing. Common sense. Don't play the victim, okay? I don't know if you're aware of this new teen movement, which I don't know where this came from. I get that it's shiny and colorful and beautiful. I don't get it, but I saw a Facebook meme this morning with an officer in the classroom trying to teach kids not to do things, right? And remember the DARE? The DARE movement, the police officer coming and telling you not to smoke cigarettes, not to smoke, not to do drugs, that sort of. I thought it was great. That was in my time era as a child, and that taught you not to do certain things, because if you did, then you're not the brightest kid on the block. And the Facebook meme shows that 10 years ago in 2008, police officer in the classroom saying, don't smoke crack. Okay, pretty simple, right? 2018, this is the progression that we've had in society. Don't eat laundry detergent pods. I don't know if you're aware of this. I swear to you, this is a movement for the young kids. I don't get where this is coming from, but there's a challenge for social media-ites, for teenagers, to do the Tide Pod Challenge. This, according to the Daily News, is the latest dangerous trend gaining traction from teenagers on social media. The challenge requires kids to ingest small laundry detergent packages and post videos of themselves doing so. You know, the nice little like Tide things with the blue and the red swirl on there with the white and the nice little packet. The laundry detergent pad you throw into the washer and everything washes that has like Clorox and stuff in it. And now it's the challenge to eat those. I don't know why, because it looks really pretty. In the video, some kids are attempting to cook the packs by frying pan before they consume, sparking the creation of countless memes across the internet poking fun at the dangerous new game. Because they are hypothetical edible Tide Pod recipes out there that you can ingest. This is where we've grown in society from the time of 10 years ago to where we were saying don't do drugs, okay, to where it's the norm for everybody to do drugs, and now we're worried about people eating Tide Pod laundry detergent pods. For crying out loud. Good Lord, I don't know what next is for our future. At the same time, then we're seeing individuals like Chelsea Manning run for Congress. Yeah. A person who is dishonorably discharged from the military, a person who has no respect for the country whatsoever, now running for U.S. government, wanting to be involved in our national diplomacy, wanting to be involved in our national government, and we think that that's even okay to allow them to jump on board with a race. 721-825-5721-TALK. I'm not sure where the country's going, but I'm a little concerned, just a little tiny bit. We're seeing the movement now of young generation millennials, the activists. And as we talk about, like we did today, the education system with the lack of educating what Martin Luther King actually taught, with teaching what we actually need to learn, our breakdown of the government. Yesterday, I was in a discussion over the weekend on social media again, because I like to do that every once in a while, and an individual who still despised Donald Trump for the fact that he was a threat to our democracy. And it still shows the absolute ignorance and naiveness that we have in society on civics, on basic civics of our separation of powers in government, of the representative form of government that we have. We are not in any way, shape, or form at all any resemblance of a democracy. We're not. We are, or should be, a constitutional republic. So we have elected officials stand on a platform, stand for a principle, stand for a value, and if we like what they have to say, we will vote for them to represent us because they're like-minded and they vote the same way that we would vote if we were in that position. They represent our votes. I threw out the idea on Friday about the hypothetical of us increasing the number of state legislators, because we've gone from when the founding of the state of Kansas in 1863 was created, we had 107,000 individuals in the state. A small portion, a small representation, and we still had the same number of legislators then, 125 House members, 40 senators, as we do right now. And we've increased to almost 3 million individuals in the state from 107,000. And I threw out the question, should we talk about increasing the number of legislators so that way we can have smaller districts, they can have more representation, and we can have more accountability? And I thought it was kind of an interesting conversation. Most people that I talked to, most listeners that called in, said, no, we're not in support of that because, number one, it would cost more money for the state, which I totally get. And number two, no, it's going to be too hard because realistically, we wouldn't be able to with the state legislature and with the Constitution, the way it's written, saying that we have 125 House members and 40 senators. And I get that. And that would be a very difficult thing to do. But to be able to cut out some of the special interests, to be able to cut out some of the corruption, and then create more government gridlock where we have more representatives and more congressmen and women that are fighting for something, trying to block bad values and bad legislation that they can try and ram through right now. We would have more of that. We could have more Tea Party conservatives and probably more progressives and Democrats on the same end as well. But government gridlock to me is a good thing. And should we increase that? I don't know. But we need to go back to the basics and the understanding of our constitutional republic, a republic form of government at the federal level and at the state level, representatives representing us, not repealing the Electoral College because that's the dumbest thing you can do. Representing us in every single district, whether you have 50 people in the district or 50 million people in a district, representing so everybody has a solid, equal voice. Everybody's represented properly, and not the democracy where you show up to a town hall meeting and whoever screams the loudest, that's the way that the elected representative should vote. because half the people didn't show up. None of your constituents really showed up, but people maybe within there that didn't vote for you the first time, or maybe are outside of your district altogether, come to your public forum and scream and yell and demand that you expand Medicaid, that you do this, that you do that you raise our taxes, that you legalize marijuana, that you increase education funding, that you increase regulation, that you ban certain different cars because it's bad for the environment, whatever you end up doing. And just because you yell the loudest, now all of a sudden that they should listen to you because they need to listen to their constituents. No, they do. But at the same time, they're a representative of a republic. And they got elected into that office because the majority of the people that showed up to the polling booth that day, when they asked for your vote, agreed with what they had to say. And if they turn from that, then all of a sudden they're going to turn their backs on every constituent that voted them into office because they agreed with their position. And that's not what we're about. It's not about who yells the loudest, because if it is, it's very easy for corruption, isn't it? Just think of it. If we had a pure democratic system, democracy at its best, democracy, then all we would have to do is pay off 51% of the country. All we would have to do is pay off 51% of a district, 51% of a state for a state race like a governorship. Congressional seat, 51%. All you have to do is make sure you promise the goodies to those people to where they support that candidate. All you got to do is promise them that. You don't have to stand on anything. You don't have to show your platform. You don't have to do anything other than give the false promises, which we already kind of see in politics today. But then you promise them something, you pay them off, and then they go to the voting booth and they vote for you, and then you are in their pocket. No matter who yells the loudest, no matter who complains the loudest, no matter who does the loudest, whatever, then you are beholden to them, and that leads to corruption, that leads to manipulation, and that leads to very dangerous situations to where not everybody is represented. We're talking about right now today being Martin Luther King Day, to where everybody's created equal, and no matter what skin color you have, everybody has the same voice, everybody has the same liberty, and everybody's guaranteed the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Just imagine the progressives, who historically were the Democrats who abused the white supremacy thing, where the KKK was a branch of the Democratic Party back in the day, where the segregationists were the Democrats back in the day, where the hatred for certain minority groups was on that side of the aisle based on ideology. If we had a democracy, imagine where we would be today. The minority groups in the country would never have a voice and never have even gotten a chance to speak with a Martin Luther King. Why? Because we're too concerned about who's the majority and who has the loudest voice, who has the money, who has the corruption. That's not a way to live society. That's not a way to do that. Democracy is a dangerous thing. We don't get taught for that in civics anymore. Civics does not teach us that anymore. They teach that we're a democracy or a democratic republic, and neither one of those actually work. 721-825-5721-TALK. When we get back to the basics of civics, we learn the separation of powers, we learn the constitutional republic system that we have, and we learn how to actually function in society without government abuse, over-regulation, or corruption in our society. Then we can hold our elected officials accountable more closely. Let's go to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. It's Nick.
Nick, what's going on, my friend?
Oh, it's Monday. It's kind of chilly, and we're just trying to get her going, get her started.
It's a beautiful day. It's a great way to start. Nice and brisk and get you excited for the day.
Get me excited, absolutely. Well, hey, I had a question.
Sure.
I didn't understand, when we talk about drugs,
sure,
right? I guess, do we separate out alcohol and other drugs from drugs, or are all drugs drugs? And is that a feeling, or is that a substance? Does that make sense?
It's more of a societal norm. It's whether the norm's right or wrong, it's more of a societal norm to where, the alcohol, yes, alcohol absolutely is a drug. We tried the prohibition and it didn't work, so we ended up banning the prohibition and allowing it to become legal again. And then other certain drugs were starting to become a little more in that same mindset of, should we be banning them? Should we allow them to be recreationally or medically used? And should we start moving down that direction? And the norm is changing very much so. But as of right now, it's more of a I would say it's more of a consistency and more of a societal norm than it is a drug versus non-drug type of discussion.
Well, I guess my question is, progressively, I don't consider myself a progressive.
Sure.
But I am for the decriminalization / legalization, whatever you want to talk about, of cannabis.
Sure.
And listening to your show, that the loyal fan that I am, I hear comments every now and then about that that's a progressive mentality. And so, one, was wondering what that exactly meant, and then two, what do you think we should do with the cannabis situation? I'll leave it at that.
I'd say, and you can say on the line here because you can comment to this, I would say, number one, that when I use the term of progressive in either legalization of cannabis in any way, shape, or form, there are two types of progressives. Either the political progressive, which is the anti-progressive because they want to degress in society and go back to back in the good old days when they had complete control and people were loving the FDR socialist movement, and there's actually real progression in society. Now, medical marijuana or recreational cannabis or whatever, I don't know which one I would take on there. The original movement of the legalization of cannabis came from more so of the progressive political agenda, to where they saw it as a political gain to inject more of it into the system, to try and tie in, as I've mentioned before, between the green card of buying cannabis and the restriction of gun rights when you do buy cannabis because you can't have two at the same time, sort of thing. And they've used it to use the political bastardization, so to speak, of the actual movement. If we are looking at actual liberty and freedom and the rights for us to have those rights, then we're moving in a great progress, of positive progress in the right direction of becoming liberty. I think in the discussion of cannabis that it should be left up to the states. I do not think that the federal government should be regulating it as the original intent. The Constitution does not give the right for the federal government to say what's okay and what's not okay in that sense, that it should be up to the states to decide on whether we actually should allow the legalization of cannabis or not, because that's really what the government is there for at the statewide level, whether we do agricultural hemp, whether we do recreational or medical marijuana, that it should be left up to the states in that sense. I don't think that it's one of those that we take to sometimes to the extreme of a God-given right to be able to do that in that sense. I think that it's because it does have a lot of factors, positive and negative, towards society and in the public and in the general public, and so to speak. So I think that it should be a statewide issue. Now, if states legalize it, all the power to them. But if states don't legalize it, I think that they also have the right to say at the statewide level, no, we're not going to legalize it. And by the way, we need to beef up our state borders in order to make sure anybody trying to cross from a legalized state to a non-legalized state do get punished in that sense as well.
And you think that, I mean, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but do you think that's a responsible use of our scarce law enforcement resources in an age where we're dealing with violent extremists and things like that, and also having children that are suffering the effects of synthetic pharmaceuticals, and then the issue of, however you want to put it down, we are Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and that sort of disparities and whatnot that I don't really want to discuss and go down that road.
Sure.
But just thinking about the freedoms, and if we're not going to advocate for that freedom, then we should be looking at prohibiting other substances that are far more dangerous, kill many more people, and it's just kind of unreal.
Sure. No, I get what you're saying, Nick, and I don't want to cut it short here because we do got to take a break, but I appreciate it. And let me just respond by saying I think that the current situation we're in right now, no, law enforcement does not have the resources to enforce something like that if we start beefing up our state borders and trying to enforce anybody that crosses the line. We don't have the resources like that. By the powers of the responsibilities of the states, then we should be in that position, but we're in no way in that situation right now because we haven't taken what's the responsibility of what the duties of the state government is compared to the duties of the federal government, because we've pawned too much of that off at the federal government and haven't focused enough of that attention onto us at the state level. So should we start redirecting different priorities? Yeah, I think we should. Absolutely, and we should get in a position to be able to do so. When it comes to the synthetic drugs, I would say that, if individuals need that medically and a state has not legalized that, there are plenty of opportunities to be able to go to different states that do that. And I understand it's kind of uprooting the livelihoods and so on and so forth, but looking traditionally at the states are sovereign. The states are sovereign to themselves, not beholden to the federal government. The compact that was the decision to create the Constitution said that the states were their individual sovereign states, and that they would convene to negotiate on a few different terms for the specific duties of the federal government, but the states were sovereign in themselves, so they can make their own state decisions. So if one state is abiding by something that you like or don't like, then you're able to stay there or take it to another state in that sense. And I think marijuana would fall into that category, in my personal opinion, of the states regulating or not regulating certain substances and legalizing certain substances or not doing so. And that's the state's obligation. That's the state's duty. And if the majority of the people within a state like a certain substance, they can vote to legalize it in that state. If they don't like to, then they can vote not to legalize it in that state. And that's the beauty and the power of the representatives being so local at the state level and representing the majority of the people and as many people as they can within a state. And then if they choose to start legalizing or legalizing other substances that are legal right now, then that's the prerogative of that state as well. All of those decisions should be made, in my opinion, at the statewide level as opposed to the federal government level, because we can have a voice in that sense, and that is a reflection and a representation of what the people in that state like as the powers that is the state sovereignty and a state government. A great conversation. I love it, and I love even the devil's advocate discussion on there, Nick, so I really appreciate that very much because it makes us think about the role and the duty of what the government's role is really supposed to be. Wrapping up the show today, one more break. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
I will say quickly on the issue of marijuana and the legalization of, I would be more open to the idea of legalization of marijuana if the government did not regulate, nor if they collected tax revenue on that, and they just let it completely be free for everybody to do as they will as a really non-revenue source for the government. I don't want them to be dependent on it. I don't want them to regulate it. It gives them too much power. We use the examples of what they've done with gun laws. If you have a green card buying marijuana, then you're not allowed to purchase a concealed carry because you're not allowed to have drugs and firearms at the same time. So I've seen how they've abused that, and they use it for their political gain, and I'm not a fan of that. If we take that power out of their hands and we don't corrupt the state government by more revenue for more spending, then I'd be okay with something like that. But it should be at the statewide levels. And I love the conversation, making sure that we are, and I want to be fair across the board for all the substances, for all the discussions we have. I want fairness across the board. If we're going to criticize one side, we need to make sure our own side's not doing the same thing. That hasn't been done for a long time in politics, and it's a little foreign when we start to hear it because we automatically assume that I'm going to defend one side doing it while I criticize the other, and I don't like to do that. If we're going to do something, let's make sure it's fair across the board. Only then will we be able to address the real issue and then move past it. This is your show. As always, it's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Have a great day, everybody.